Now, Chairman Powell was pointedly asked whether the Fed is positioned appropriately, meaning does it have enough rate room to cut dramatically if needed if there were a sudden serious downturn in the economy. His response, quote, "We don't have that kind of room. We're too close to zero rates." Let's bring in two guys, both very experienced in markets and investing, and they are both Fed watchers. Euro Pacific Capital CEO and President Peter Schiff and Milken Institute Chief Economist Bill Lee. Peter, I'll start with you. That make you nervous that he had to admit we're too close to zero to have enough if there were a bad downturn in the economy?
Well, and it's the Fed's fault that we're down here. But of course, whenever the Fed cuts interest rates in the face of recession, it's not helping the economy. The recession is what's helping the economy because the recession is trying to restructure the bubble, right? The Fed artificially, manipulates the economy with cheap money. And then when that cheap money results in a recession, the Fed comes to the rescue with more cheap money. But all we're really doing is creating a bigger problem. And, the Fed chairman said that the U.S. economy is in a good place. Well, they always say that. No matter how precariously the U.S. economy is perched, you can always count on a Fed chairman to say everything is great.
Well, things are not that bad, though, economically, Bill, when you look at the issues that he articulated. Let's get to Bill Lee at the moment. I need to hear from you what you thought, if that struck a little bit of fear in your heart, that he flat out had to say, no, we've cut very close to zero.
Actually, Liz, I take away a really positive spin from Chair Powell's testimony because he said the U.S. economy is strong. We have positive rates. We're attracting capital from all over the world. It's keeping the U.S. economy much stronger than anywhere in the rest of the world. And I think that's the story. Now, in terms of the fear, you're right. But the fears are coming from the slowdown in Europe, the slowdown in China, and that drives more capital into the United States. So the need for us to cut is really quite limited. And remember, there's a lot of quantitative easing we can do between now and then to bolster the amount of liquidity and funding of investment that comes into the economy.
We've thrown so much liquidity into the economy, and the markets are at all-time highs. Any gain for these three names, I believe, is, any gain for the Dow, any gain for the NASDAQ, and 1 point of gains for the S&P today would bring another trifecta of records, Peter. Let the good times roll is what both the Fed and the president are saying. But the president takes it a step further, saying, cut rates, go to negative, give me some of that.
Yeah, ironically, the negative interest rates that Trump is longing for are actually hurting the European economy and helping to prop up our economy. Yes, we are getting some capital moving into the U.S. because it's fleeing the negative interest rates in the Eurozone. And so it's propping up our asset markets and artificially boosting consumer spending. So that's making the U.S. economy look better in the short run. But ultimately, we're setting ourselves up for a big fall. And remember, don't put much stock into what Powell says, because a year ago, Powell was saying that the Fed was going to keep increasing interest rates and keep shrinking its balance sheet. It's done the opposite. It's now cut interest rates 3 times, and the balance sheet is growing faster now than it was when they were officially doing quantitative easing.
Bill Lee, give me a sense, since you look at this as a positive development, all the good things about the economy that you see. Would you stay invested in the market? And I ask that because the bond yields are saying something different. And there are suddenly a bunch of articles saying that the high net worth individuals are going more into cash, anywhere from 20 to 30%. Stephen Schwartzman has just come out. He, of course, of Blackstone, the CEO, warning about a recession next year. Would you stay happy in the markets?
And that reflects the political uncertainty because of the weird policies that Democrats are proposing in terms of wealth tax and all sorts of other confiscatory policies. But Chair Powell said something that Peter will absolutely agree with, which is to say, Congress, you do your job. Congress, make it easier for people to find jobs by getting rid of regulatory restrictions, by enabling more incentives for private sector to hire. I think Chair Powell essentially said the onus is on you guys to fix the economy because monetary policy has done all it can and will continue to do even more if needed, but the real chore is for Congress to do its job.
Peter, you agree with that?
Well, Powell said that he thought that the national debt was unsustainable and that there was a problem there, yet he, doesn't look at the Fed's role in enabling that problem. How is the Fed chairman going to scold Congress for running big deficits when it's the Federal Reserve that's monetizing those deficits and making it all possible? If the Fed really did its job and allowed interest rates to rise, then Congress would have no choice but to cut spending. It's the Fed that is enabling all the spending and all the deficits.
Okay, guys, we got to run, but I just need a one-letter answer. Grade Chairman Powell so far. Bill Lee, you first, then Peter. Bill.
B- and C for technical performance because of repo market volatility, but A for today's testimony.
Peter?
Well, I'm just going to have to give him an F, but then I give Powell and Yellen and Bernanke and Greenspan. They've all got Fs, so, I don't want to unfairly tarnish Powell. Okay. But none of them would pass my course.
Good to see you both. Thank you very much. Peter Schiff and Bill Lee.